About 5,300 people currently work in BHP's Rod and Bar division. As a short-term measure to make it more viable, the number of staff will be reduced to 4,000 over the next 2 years. However, the long-term future of the company is also being considered. The BHP Steel Rod and Bar division is under review by management. One of a number of options being considered is the introduction of a mini-mill plant. A mini-mill would reduce the number of stages in the steel-making process because it melts down scrap steel. Mini-mill technology would make the operation of the Rod and Bar division more cost-effective. But if this new technology were introduced, the Federated Ironworkers Union say jobs would go.
The effects of the introduction of a mini-mill plant, Jane, would be a workforce in the order of about 1,500, and that's the current speculation in regard to those figures. It would mean 3,500 less jobs at the Newcastle Steelworks, and that's something that we find very difficult to live with.
BHP management refused to speculate.
It depends on which is the recommended course of action, and as clearly we won't know before the end of this year, it really is speculative as to how a technology that might be preferred would affect numbers in Newcastle.
The study will be completed at the end of the year when decisions about the future of BHP in Newcastle will be made. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
There was no sleepy Sunday morning for residents of Mannering Park. 70 volunteers gathered to clean up the local public schools classrooms, which were the target of vandals overnight. Paint had been hurled around the rooms, glue poured on the floors, graffiti scrawled on walls, and windows and furniture smashed.
Well, I've never experienced anything as bad as this before. It's well beyond anything that I've had any previous experience with.
6 classrooms were vandalised, as well as a music block and administration and staff offices. Tom Weeks says he is uncertain what the damage bill will be.
Fairly obviously, it's very considerable.
Despite the vandalism, it will be back to the books as normal tomorrow after 2 weeks' holidays for the school's 350 students. Fingerprint experts from Gosford Police combed the damaged staff rooms this morning, and investigations are continuing. No one is keener to see arrests made for the vandalism than 6th grader Anthony O'Connor.
Oh, I think it's disgusting because a lot of the classrooms they won't have books and all that to read in and books to write in and pencils.
The annual Coastline Capers Fun Run attracted around 300 athletes of varying degrees of fitness and skill level, and they were all out to raise a few dollars for the Merriweather Surf Lifesaving Club and the AIDS Foundation. The course was slightly altered owing to rockfalls near the South Newcastle Surf Club, and the runners had a steep climb up past the hospital and then into King Edward Park, which made even the reasonably fit amongst the runners balk a little bit. Seasoned athlete David Forbes, a former New South Wales 1500 metre champion, was first home in the time of 25.12 minutes, and a further 4 minutes back was the first female, Eleanor Seepin from Waverley in Sydney, her time 29.44 minutes. The junior male section was a triumph for Ben Cantello in 28.13, and the junior female winner was Catherine Suarez in 32 minutes flat. It was an absolute quagmire at Waratah Oval, and any attack was difficult. A minute from half-time, Darren Woods towed through, and although held back, won the race, and South had opened their account. Waratah, knowing the importance of the match, couldn't do a thing right, and Darren Ford turned them around with a chip kick a minute after the resumption, raced through and towed the ball forward. Again was first man to the ball, got a toe to it, and beat everyone to score a fabulous solo try, and South were back in the minor premiership race. Over at Brambles Field, North Nelson Bay proved they aren't out of the competition race with a fine win over the Butcher Boys. This try a gem. Steve Vallette to Gutherson, on to Peter Sams, and his pass found Sam Meehan, and the Marlins are knocking on the door of the final five. Brilliant conditions prevailed at 1 Mile Beach for the second and final day of the Pacific Dreams Pro Junior Surfing Contest. The event attracted around 150 of the coast's most talented youngsters, and they were tested in the glassy conditions. The semi-finals were thrilling, with Brett Chalker just outpointing the experienced Dave MacArthur, while in the other semi, Chad Edser served notice he would be tough to beat in the decider with a good win over Mitchell Dawkins. But the final turned into a one-horse race as Chalker revelled in the Super Surf to record a clean 5-0 win over Edser and be declared the champion.
Kismet is a 24-hour slice of the life of a poet, Haj, and his daughter, Masina. They live in poverty in Baghdad until the turns and twists of fate bring them riches far beyond their dreams. Against the colourful backdrop of Arabian bazaars, harems and secret treasures, humble Haj is transformed into a powerful emir. His beautiful daughter is wooed by a king. It's an ambitious production for the company. The 46-member cast is the largest ever assembled by Novocastrian Productions. The musical is traditionally accompanied by a live orchestra, but this time a computer will generate the music. The curtain rises on Kismet tomorrow night for a 3-week season.
As always, the Greenpeace protest was a carefully orchestrated media event watched closely by the police. Protesters assembled a giant pesticide drum outside Wyong Shire Council representing one of Bayer's more controversial products, the insecticide tocuthione, now undergoing a federal government registration review. The chemical is prepared at the Bayer plant in Wyong, a factory Greenpeace says shouldn't be operating in the first place.
Wyong Shire Council has let Bayer Chemical Company in the back door. They've allowed a whole series of small development applications to go through with no environmental impact statement.
Greenpeace claims that ever since Bayer took over the existing chemical company in 1987, it's expanded its operations by stealth until they're well outside the original development terms. It now believes that Bayer is seeking rezoning of the site to expand its operations even further. A company spokesman made no secret of Bayer's eagerness to expand.
Production capacities are sufficient, they are underutilised. We only want to use them a little bit better to push more volume through in order to become economically viable.
After persistent protests by some local residents, which included a court challenge, the company is now submitting an environmental impact statement to Wyong Shire Council. Greenpeace delegates met Town Clerk John Dawson, seeking an assurance that the submission wouldn't be rubber-stamped. Later, Mr Dawson would only say that Council had acted properly in its dealings with Bayer.
The Council has no reason to believe that it hasn't acted either responsibly or validly as far as the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act is concerned.
The Bayer plant is on the perimeter of the Porters Creek wetlands, which drain into Tuggerah Lakes. Greenpeace says the lake and its fishing industry are in danger of a chemical spill. Bayer says that won't happen.
There's not really a difference between pushing through a small volume, as it is just now, or a little bit a higher volume through the same plant, as long as all these safety precautions and environmental protection precautions are present.
Public submissions are being invited on the environmental impact statement until July the 25th, and Greenpeace has promised further protests as that deadline approaches. Tom Hilston, NBN News. Police say Domenico Barbera of Failford was killed instantly when his vehicle veered to the wrong side of the road into the path of a semi-trailer 5 kilometres north of Nabiac on the Pacific Highway. It's believed the youth was celebrating his 15th birthday when he took the family car for a joyride. The driver of the semi-trailer was unhurt. Traffic in the southbound lane was delayed as rescue services cleared the wreckage. And police have released the name of a semi-trailer driver killed when his truck rolled on a bend of the Mandalong Road approaching the F3 freeway late yesterday afternoon. Police say Raymond Charles Norton, 40 of Ambervale in southwest Sydney, was crushed in the cabin of his vehicle and died before rescuers could free him. The trailer was carrying a 30-tonne load of ash from Araring Power Station.
Last night's public meeting to discuss the future of Green Point was thrown into disarray when the estate's owners threatened to withdraw their application for rezoning of the land for housing and public space. The owners also threatened to take the council to the Land and Environment Court over its refusal to approve rezoning of a 4-lot rural subdivision. Aldermen later voted to put the withdrawn proposal on public display. But Margaret Seacombe from the Green Point Action Committee says the display would be pointless.
It seems to me that what they're doing now is putting it on display so the public have to go through the process of commenting, writing submissions, and then ultimately we expect it to be rejected anyway, which does seem a little foolish.
Mrs Seacombe believes the estate owners were trying to railroad council into making a decision in their favour.
I suppose they caved into a degree of threats or a degree of pressure. Not threats, but at least pressure implied by Mr Savage and his negotiators when they suggested that they might take the council to the Land and Environment Court.
But Mayor Ivan Welsh believes that an end to the Green Point debate is closer, especially with council and the owners meeting again on Friday.
So this will be the first time that council's been consulted by the developer and his consultant, and I believe that those aldermen that go into that particular meeting are going to have a meeting beforehand, so they will know council's bottom line before they go to the meeting. At least they will know what they're bargaining on.
The owner's development consultant, Trevor Hudson, says while his clients have run out of patience, they are looking forward to Friday's meeting. However, if the proposal for 40 of the estate's 220 hectares to be rezoned for residential is knocked back, court action will go ahead.
Foster-Gloucester school hockey matches are always hard-fought and usually one-sided. Gloucester and the Blue Strips started aggressively with players throwing themselves into the job. Both teams had got through a knockout comp of 25 Hunter sides for a chance to play for the Asander Cup. In the upset of the competition, Foster took the final 2-1. With goals to Crane and Crichton, Hazel scored for the Blues. And more junior sport action at Raymond Terrace last night. The Hong Kong squash team gave locals a taste of international competition. 16-year-olds Coco and Iris Chung shared their skills with some terrace talent.
For thousands of Australians, caring for a frail, disabled or elderly loved one is a daily reality. It's an unpaid job, and the State's Carers Association believes its importance is often underestimated by the government.
If we and everyone in Newcastle was to take their charges and arrive at the hospital, dump them and go away, the whole of the health services in Australia would collapse.
The government does provide carers with some support, offering them respite care.
You have a respite in the home in which someone comes in and virtually babysits the person, or you can take the person to a day centre, or if you really want a break, to put them in a nursing home or a hostel for a fortnight or 3 weeks at a time, so you can really have a break.
Today's conference heard respite care places must be increased and broadened to help a wider range of people to give carers relief.
They don't want to get rid of their charges, they want to do a better job. And a respite does give them that little bit of break so they can, say, face the next day or the next year.
The region's 600,000 income tax returns are flowing in for processing at Newcastle, and officers have detected problems with superannuation contribution claims.
Generally speaking, people who are making contributions to employer-sponsored funds are not entitled to deductions for superannuation fund deductions, and that's where they're going wrong.
Only those people who pay their own superannuation without employer support or with the sponsorship of the 3% award agreement can claim deductions. This is clearly pointed out in the tax pack. If still in doubt, employees should check where they stand with their company on the matter, or take the inquiry to the tax office before lodging a return incorrectly.
With regard to penalties, they can be subject to up to double the amount of tax that's been avoided, or in the more severe cases, subject to prosecution action.
Although Elcom has trimmed its workforce by a third in the past 3 years, a new staffing review indicates there's more job shedding ahead. The review has pinpointed 250 jobs that should go from the Araring, Vales Point and Munmora power stations. The Commission's General Manager, Barry Flanagan, says he hopes the excess staff will take up positions at other power stations, including Liddell and Bayswater in the Hunter Valley. But the prospect of moving is not welcomed by some workers. Ray Ansell and Andrew North transferred from Vales Point 2 years ago, and they're not keen to move again.
Quite settled where I am, and my family and wife definitely wouldn't want to move up the valley.
Well, people have come to an area where they're acquired to be used to the setup where they're working. They seem to just want to keep moving us around.
But the union says it's not only the workers' resistance to uprooting family and home that Elcom has to contend with in its hopes to transfer staff. Alan Drew from the FEDFA says that there are no more than a dozen jobs in the Hunter Valley's power stations that the workers could move to. He says 250 excess jobs into 12 vacancies just don't add up. Although an Elcom spokesman said there were no plans for forced retrenchments, the workers are fearful that's not the case if they don't agree to a transfer.
Well, we're presuming then there will be forced retrenchments.
The union believes Elcom is trying to shed more jobs internally in favour of contractors and to pave the way for privatisation. But the loss of more jobs won't be tolerated.
Unemployment queues on the Central Coast have increased 50% over the last year.
and those employees will join the queue, and there's no way they're going to cop that without there being a bloodbath in the power stations.
Rachel Hetherington has 5 hours of practice ahead of her, but that doesn't deter the young lady who is determined to be a world champion. Where do you hope to be in 5 years?
I'd like to be travelling around the world and playing on all the great courses.
Gloucester may seem an unusual place to find such a talented and ambitious player, but Rachel believes distance is no disadvantage.
It's nice and peaceful, and it's got a good little course and lots of good practice fairway, so heaps of room.
In the last month alone, Rachel has won both the South Pacific Junior and Open Classics at Surfers Paradise and the Queensland, Victorian and New South Wales Junior Championships. On Saturday, she's off to Sydney for the New South Wales Amateur Open, then to Brisbane for the Queensland Amateur Open, followed by the same event in South Australia. It's a hectic schedule, but Rachel believes the sacrifices are well worthwhile.
I'd like to become really good, and I think I could with a lot of practice.
Most of the time Rachel practices alone. With a handicap of 1, she's a long way ahead of most players, but she's well aware of where her weaknesses lie.
My consistency, I'd like to improve that a lot, and my putting, if I can putt as good as the guys on TV, I'd be happy.
To refine her talent, Rachel travels to Brisbane for a week every month to see her coach Ian Trigg, the man behind players like Ian Baker-Finch, Peter Senior and Roger Davis. According to Father Ron, her coach believes her potential is unlimited.
Well, they're addressing Rachel very much in the same category as Jan Stevenson was when she was at the same age.
But being so good and still an amateur is an expensive business.
In monetary terms, with the way Rachel has pursued a career, like she doesn't work, she just plays golf, I would say that it's in the vicinity of about $20,000 a year. I think once you see talent, that talent's got to be brought out at whatever expense.
Turning professional is an option Rachel may consider, but at the moment there's still a lot to do on the amateur circuit.
Congratulations. Good on you.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
And while she's definitely the toast of Gloucester Golf Club, her most devoted fan is her dad.
To say that I'm proud of my daughter would be the greatest understatement of a lifetime.
When the Falcons and the Spectres met on May the 10th, there wasn't much between the two teams. The Falcons had won 2 of their 5 matches and the Spectres had a 3-3 record. But the scoreboard at the end of that encounter may have been an early pointer as to how the season would pan out. Eastside 126, Newcastle 93. Since then, the Melbournians have played consistent basketball to be sitting just outside the top 6, while the Falcons, hit by internal strife and poor form, are languishing at the bottom of the ladder with a 2-13 record. However, with a new coach at the helm and a renewed optimism in the camp, an upset is not out of the question.
We're really not that far away from winning ball games. We've been in close ball games with good teams, and it's the little things now that we're going to have to work on. So we're going to be a hard-working, happy team is probably going to be our style.
Tom Weisman has spent most of the season with the Falcons as Ken Cole's understudy, and although the style won't alter a great deal, it will be done the Weisman way.
Pressure defense, pressure offense. Really, we want to run. We've got a team that's a good open court team, so we're going to sort of organize the break a bit differently and try to get people ahead of the basketball